what I learned actually is that luxury is not just about the price tag. It's about the service. It's about the level of service. It is about the connection that you have with that client.
All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business.
Hey, it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. Today, we are talking about what I learned designing a $12 million home. In fact, many multi-million-dollar homes, and working for a luxury interior designer for 5 whole years. Let me tell you about the time I worked with Stephen Taylor. Part of me wanted to honor Stephen in this podcast episode. He passed away just towards the end of, in fact, in the very last days of 2025. And I just wanted to honor him. And I had wanted to have him as a guest on this podcast. And so I have a lot of regrets, and I regret not asking him. And all the feelings that you feel when someone who has been close to you is leaves this world. So I will try not to be emotional, but I do want to honor him because I do want to share with you how much I learned about serving high-end clients and running a business from him. He was my really first pass at doing design. He was the first person that I worked for after I graduated from interior design school and moved back to Toronto. In fact, he's the reason that I moved back to Toronto in the first place. Quick story before we dive into the episode. I went to design school in Vancouver, and I was working at a restaurant. I was working at Earl's. I was the day leader. Shout out to Earl's girls at the Earl's on First Street in Vancouver. If you know, you know. And that was paying my way to pay my rent while I put myself through interior design school in Vancouver. Once school ended, I started working part-time for a home staging firm. I could not get a job. I applied to work at a couple design firms, but out that way, things are quite modern in aesthetic. And I remember being at an interview. In fact, one of my professors at school had connected me with a friend of theirs who was looking to hire an interior designer, and he suggested me. And I went to the interview, and they were in like a fancy gas town like studio. That's a neighborhood in Vancouver. And I showed them my portfolio, and they kept talking about how our aesthetic really matters. And I was like, okay, whatever, I don't get it. But now in hindsight, I get it. They didn't hire me because I was way more traditional in my design aesthetic and what I liked. And they wanted someone more with a modern edge, which I totally get now. It's so funny, but I could not find a job. So I just kept working at Earl's, and I worked part-time hourly for Decora. It was a home staging company that had a home staging TV show. They were one of the first ever HGTV shows about staging. I can't remember what it was called anymore, so I knew of them. It was a very cool experience. Nothing like managing an interior design project, I can tell you. But still very interesting, and I loved their process and the systems and the warehouse, and everything was so methodical and so organized. It was kind of boring for me at the time, to be honest, but in hindsight, I'm like, oh, a smart business model. And I kind of didn't love living in Vancouver anymore. I was kind of tired, and I had some personal events go on in my life, and I just felt like I wanted to be home. And my cousin Laura, who's also an interior designer, had said, you got to come work for Stephen. He needs a new assistant. She had worked for him briefly. He had become a close friend. And she's like, I'm going to call him. You got to come back to Toronto and work and live here. And I was like, okay. I chatted with him on the phone. He's like, okay, sure. Yeah, I'll hire you. I think it was like $18 an hour. I don't even know what it was anymore. It was not good money, but it was a good opportunity. And he's like, okay, you can start in like, I don't know, in a few weeks or something. I don't remember what it was. Gave my notice at Earl's. They were like, great, you don't need to stay the whole many weeks. I was like, what? That was my first understanding of when an employee says they're leaving, you know they're going to check out, so you just move on right away. That's a whole other lesson for a whole other time. No, Earl's was amazing, but I was done. And so I started to pack up my apartment in Vancouver. I sold everything I had and put a few bags on a Greyhound bus to Toronto, and I flew home. And I waited for the phone to ring. I waited for Stephen to call me. I was like at home for maybe a week or two. I'm like, is this job going to materialize? Because I'm living on my mom's couch right now. And it did finally. He's like, okay, come in on Monday. And we were off to the races. So here we go. Here is my story. And here is what I learned. Okay, let's go back to that time in my career where I felt completely out of my depth. Like, who let me into the room? Who let this girl, Rebecca, into these showrooms, into these clients' homes? Like, really, who let me order fabric that cost $400 a yard? Because when I first started working for Stephen Taylor, I was terrified. I was intimidated. I was overwhelmed. I felt like I was absolutely faking it. And kind of, let's be honest, a little bit I was, because I wasn't taught this bleep in design school. Stephen would walk me into these high-end showrooms, introduce me as his assistant, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I can't believe I'm actually here. I remember being inside Cooper Brothers for the first time, where they made all his custom furniture, and just thinking, oh my gosh, I don't even know the beginning of how this works. School did not prepare me for this. They didn't teach me how to order fabric. They didn't teach me how to speak to clients at this level. They definitely didn't teach me what things actually cost. And so that's what today's episode is really about. It's not just about the $12 million home. And yes, we did design it. We built it from the ground up, and it sold for over $12 million. It's not about the price tag, but what I learned about luxury service, trust, and leadership. The lessons that completely reshaped how I run my business. And the lessons that have stuck with me today as I move on this journey called life. So, I knew right away that I had been thrust into a very different world. The very first time that Stephen asked me to place an order for fabric was my first day. I remember walking into his office and sitting at my desk, and there were papers everywhere, because if anyone knows Stephen, he's a little disheveled. It was very creative, but sometimes the paperwork was everywhere, and it was all old school. It was paper files, I can tell you, and an old version of QuickBooks that he had got on a CD-ROM. This was not online updates, guys. This was manual data entry, spreadsheets, all the things, you name it. There was no programmer back then to help you. There was no programmer back then to help you organize and manage your business. There really were not a lot of programs at all available on the marketplace. Anyhow, I digress. So, first day I walk in, he's like, okay, well, can you just order, we've got a bunch of these fabrics for this client. Can you place the order with Kravet? I was like, first of all, who and what is Kravet? And I have no idea how to, so just pick up the phone, just call them. Here's everything's written down. It's like on paper scratch, we need 3 yards of this, 4 yards of this, blah, blah, blah. I call them. They're asking me questions like, okay, would you like us to place a CFA? I'm like, what's that? I turned to Steve. I'm like, do we need a CFA? Oh, no, we don't need that. It was like total chaos. I was definitely in the deep end. I was blown away too when the cost of the fabric was $300 for a yard and we were ordering 6 yards. I was like, who will pay for this? And I'd grown up with nice things. There was a very, very well-known decorator in my family, but I wasn't privy to that side of things. And so, it was funny. Like, he and I would walk through showrooms and I would point to things. I was like, oh, what about that chair? What about that table? Because it would be trendy or it would be cool. And he would literally scoff and say, no, that's terrible quality. Or no, that's overdone. Or no, we'll see that everywhere. I felt really in the early days like I was just kept hitting, like, what's the word? I felt in the early days like I was really striking out. And I didn't really have the sophisticated taste at that time that I thought I did. But over time, sometimes he would let me run a design scheme. And he would say, let's pull this together. We want to do something like this and that. And he was kind of being the creative director. But ultimately, in the end, I realized he was just kind of indulging me, or maybe just allowing me to spread my wings just a little to learn, because most of the time after I'd put together the whole scheme, he would quietly go and change everything. It wouldn't be all at once. It'd be like, well, maybe not this fabric because of this, and then maybe not that. And then by the end, nothing I'd selected made the final cut. That was at the beginning. Over time, that changed, and he developed a lot more confidence in me and allowed me to really help make decisions and do a lot of the legwork for him and come up with some really great creative solutions. But early on, I thought that these luxury clients just wanted expensive things, maybe name brands, and that was the difference between a high-end client and somebody like me. But what I learned actually is that luxury is not just about the price tag, it's about the service. It's about the level of service. It is about the connection that you have with that client. And there's one moment from that $12 million home that I will never forget. And we were standing, it was a new build home in a very wealthy neighborhood in Toronto. We were talking about this custom brass railing. Stephen had this idea of this brass railing. He had various images for inspiration that he was pulling together. And I think I said something like, well, can't the builder just do it? Because I'm pretty sure the builder had said, oh, I have a guy, he can make this. No, Stephen would never go for that. He wanted full creative control. And he said, no, I have someone to make it custom. But guess what? He didn't. But we had to find someone. And we did. And we found someone. And we made the most freaking fabulous, 100% unique railing that went up 3 stories of an open staircase, handrail made of brass. And that was after many years having worked with Stephen. But it was a great reminder to me that it's not just about checking a box and moving on. In my own design business in the early years, I felt so stressed out and so fragmented that despite wanting to do more elaborate designs and invest the time to have something quality and custom made the way I learned from Stephen, I was just frantically trying to get the job done. And so I sometimes would just kind of quickly move to the next thing. I wouldn't push the boundaries with the clients as much. But the reality is, that's not what builds a stellar high-end designer. That's just someone who's doing the job to get it done. And there's a difference. The difference is constantly asking yourself, how do we elevate this? How do we take the time to make this unique, to really invest in a quality craftsmanship item? How do we stand out? How do we differentiate? How do we do this in a way no one else would? How do we make this look expensive, even when sometimes that's not always? That mindset changes everything. The how do I push the boundary and think outside of the box? That is what distinguishes those premium interior designers from the everyday designer. And it doesn't happen overnight. And it's something that I slowly did in my own firm when I went out on my own. But I really had to push because I did not have those clients that Stephen had. I wasn't being asked to design $12 million homes. I was being asked to renovate a powder room or a kitchen, and then maybe a main floor. And then I would push it to a full home reno, maybe an addition, and then eventually to the new builds, and then eventually to $1 million homes. But it didn't happen overnight, but it also doesn't happen by accident. It happens by pushing the boundaries, by asking the client, let's just try this thing. Let's do it a little different. So here's where things really blew my mind working for Stephen, especially in the beginning. There was no pitch. I mean, really, there was no pitch. There was no sales pitch. There was no paid consultation. I know, I teach designers, you need to get charged for your time. Because when you're someone who's starting out at the bottom, you got to pre-qualify to get to the top. He was already at the top. He would get clients who would just hire us. They would say, okay, when can you start? How long will it take? And then the clients would just send checks for hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. And we would just go. We would put together a design scheme without too much detail. And the client would say, we like the look. And then we would just start purchasing. Sure, everything was itemized for the client and we captured everything in the books, but and everything was professional, but it was never that hyper detailed breakdown of how many yards, how much is it per yard. I didn't put all the SKUs on the invoices. I wasn't saying where things were from. There was an initial presentation, but it was broad strokes. There was trust. We showed the look, the feel, the vision, maybe a picture of an item, but not the fully flushed out room. I can tell you, as the assistant, this frustrated me because all I wanted was to be able to know everything so that then I could do my job to source, if we hadn't sourced it yet, place the order, to track everything, to follow all the details, follow all the breadcrumbs right till the end. Which is why when I started my own firm, eventually I built out a process for this, because that chaos, that creative chaos, for me didn't work. However, it worked for him. And the takeaway from that is not to be chaotic and is not, I still believe you need to design everything up front. But the takeaway is what is communicated to the client. And years later, running my own firm, I had an operations manager or an office manager, Marianne, who had worked for an architect. And I remember we did a presentation to a client in the boardroom here at the studio. Clients left. And afterwards, Marianne said to me, she was older, much wiser. She has since retired. But she said to me, Rebecca, you don't need to give them so much detail in the presentation. They don't need to know and they don't want to know. Wait and let them ask questions. They just want the broad strokes, which is so ironic that she was teaching me that, because that had been my experience working for Stephen. I think for me, it gave me confidence. It made me feel more capable when I was able to describe why I made every single decision and how this connected here. And if you see, we've repeated the brass here and there. And then this, and there's going to be so many of this. It's too much. It's information overload for your clients. And when you get to a premium client, maybe clients when you're just doing a powder room and they have a really tight budget and they want to know where everything is from, it's different. I get that. I've been there too. But if you keep pushing forward and you keep leveling up, you'll get to that client that trusts that you've got the details. They don't need you to spew out all the detailed information to you. And Marianne was right. And I knew that because I'd worked with Stephen, but I'd had a little period of time there where that wasn't working because I wasn't serving that client. I stopped talking to my clients about, we're doing 6 yards of this and 4 yards of that. It was more, this is the fabric for that chair. And this is the fabric for those curtains, which is exactly what we did with Stephen's clients. And the best part is that premium clients never ask where things are from. They're not saying, oh, who's the vendor? Where do you buy that? Where can you find it? Can I look? Can I go touch it? Can I go see it? They don't ask pricing. Occasionally it'll come up if there's a special item or if you feel like we're extremely over budget in a certain area. But that was it. In those days with Stephen, I learned that trust is the currency. Trust is the currency. There was so much trust. That trust I did not have when I went out on my own initially. I mean, they trusted me a little. I don't know if I really trusted myself. I'm not sure I fully trusted myself, which maybe was part of the problem. But there was so much trust, and that is what you need. I mean, knowing that didn't serve me when I went out on my own, because suddenly my clients wanted all the numbers, and I was like, what? I'm not used to doing this. Budget? What the heck is that? But it did teach me something critical. And I have seen this now in the later years of my business. Again, premium clients do not want to manage you. They want to trust you. I'm going to say that again. Premium clients do not want to manage you. They want to trust you so that they can go off and do their thing. They can go play tennis. They can go to Turks and Caicos. They can do whatever their little heart desires, take their son to a hockey game. Relationships are everything in this business. And one of the most surprising things for me was how these personal relationships built trust, and the relationships would linger, like blah, 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 blah. Relationship builds trust. Without trust, there's no relationship. Do you see where I'm going with this? That is the secret sauce to having repeat referral premium clients. Build a relationship. One of the most surprising things for me was seeing Stephen's personal relationships with our clients. I, to be honest, didn't really get it at the beginning, right? But now in hindsight, I totally do. Stephen was invited to the client's daughter's birthday party every year, when she was 1, when she was 2, when she was 3, when she was 4. I remember going with him to this super fancy children's store in Rosedale. I don't know if it's still there. It was called Advice from a Caterpillar. Shout out to that beautiful little store. And he picked out a $300 designer outfit. I don't know. It was some designer of jacket, or I can't even remember what it was. This pretty little pink thing for a toddler. $300. I remember thinking, this is freaking insane. I thought it was totally over the top. Like, why don't just get her, I don't know, something cute. But then I mean, it was cute. Trust me, it was super cute. But then I realized something. He wasn't buying that because he thought it was worth it, or he thought that it was like, he definitely thought it was cute and charming. I mean, he had a lot of style. But he wasn't buying what he would have bought for his kids at that age. He was buying what the client would see and value for her kids. He knew what his clients valued. Even if he personally thought it was ridiculous to spend that much on clothes, I don't even remember. But even if that's what he thought, because let's be honest, a toddler will wear something for maybe 6 months until they've outgrown it. But he understood where that client shopped and what they valued. And in fact, the store even knew the client. And so they would say, oh no, she hasn't bought this yet for her daughter, but she does have this outfit and that outfit. That, my friends, is luxury. It is not about your preferences. And yes, you want to share who you are a little bit, obviously, so that you can connect with your client. And maybe if you want to throw in your own personal twist, great. But it's about understanding your client's preferences. Really understanding your clients at a real, almost like molecular level. Because here's the biggest misconception that I see that designers have. Designers think that premium clients are different than them. And they don't understand that. And they live in a different world. And how can I get into that world? They also see this idea that premium clients are going to be demanding. And if you do get into that world, like, oh, those clients are going to be difficult to manage. So maybe I don't really want that. And we sometimes have these self-limiting beliefs that, oh, it's going to be so much work. I don't want to do it. And maybe you even think as a designer that premium clients are going to want to know where things are from and demand to know, to be involved. They're going to want options. They're going to want control. They're going to want to understand, like, where did you get that from? The thing is, they don't. These clients are high functioning humans. They are professionals most of the time. If they aren't, they are freaking busy. Their brains are full. They have activities in the day. They have places to go. They've got people to see. And they are used to paying a premium dollar for a premium service. They are used to other people doing things for them. They are used to maybe having a nanny or a housekeeper or having a gardener come every week. Or maybe they have a professional tennis instructor. They spend money so that they can spend time doing what they love and want. And part of that spending money is on you, is on an interior designer, so they don't have to be bothered. They want the house to look amazing. Just do it. They want to play tennis at the Granite Club. They want to travel to, I don't know, Florida. They don't want to make a million decisions about tile. In fact, they don't care what the tile is as long as it's good quality and it looks great. And someone else manages it. They want you to say, I've got this. Go on your vacation. And that means that your process has to reflect that. Your marketing has to reflect that. Leadership is a luxury. Part of being a leader is showing up not just as you, but as a team. And so for a long time, I believed that if clients knew that if I wasn't doing everything myself, they would think the work wasn't as good or something. I don't even know. And that belief is so common. The reality is using the word we gives you power. And I see a lot of designers inside my programs talk about how, oh, I can't say we because it's just me. But we could be you and a bookkeeper. We could be you and a freelance graphic designer. We could be you and somebody who does your AutoCAD drawings. We could be you and the assistant who shows up just to go to consultations. It could be anybody. We means you are serious about your business. And having a team, as you start to build your team and hire part-time assistants and hire full-time people, having a team actually will create a buffer between you and the client so that you can be there for pretty things. You can be there for the fun things. You can be there as the friend to the client, and you're no longer the first line of defense. This, for me in my own business, was a game changer. And I saw this with Stephen. I would be the one dealing with the angry email. I would be the one mentioning the back order. I would be the one having to do the dirty work, let's be honest. And he got to come in and be the hero. And if I wrote back to the client something that, I thought this is what we should say, Stephen could come in and say, well, no, that's not going to be good enough. I'm just going to tell the client this thing. But then it made him look like the hero. And he wasn't like he was throwing me under the bus ever. Never, ever, ever. We were always a team. But the client saw him as more professional. You don't want to be the first line of defense, guys. You want to be the one who steps in and solves the problem, the hero. You want to be the hero to your client. And the reality is, Stephen was never doing everything. And everyone knew it, and nobody cared. They cared that it was beautiful. They cared that it looked expensive, and they cared that it was handled for them so they could go off and live their lives. So finally, I just want to share with you, there's so many stories that I could share, and maybe I'll do a few more episodes in the year ahead as the stories come back to my memory. But I just want to share this defining moment for me. When I was his assistant, and I finally was able to step into my power and feel confident as a designer, because a lot of the time I was kind of running around, doing all the things, doing the admin, placing the orders, picking up the samples, dropping things off, meeting the contractor. Like I was an assistant. I was doing assistant things. But then he was going on vacation to South Africa. And South Africa's far from Toronto, for those who don't know. So he was going for 3 whole weeks. And he left me in charge. And that for me was when something shifted. First of all, it was clear that he finally trusted me. Well, at least he trusted me enough to keep things moving in his absence. There were no major decisions to be made. I think there were some small decisions that I got to make while he was away. That was the moment I stopped feeling like the assistant who didn't belong, and I started feeling like a real designer. That was when I was able to call the shots. I tidied the office in his absence. I really stepped into my role. And sometimes we just need to give the people working for us that space to do their job too. Today, boundaries are everything for me. I choose when I work. I choose what I work on. I hire people to support me. And I like to build teams where people have autonomy to make decisions so that I don't become the bottleneck. Because premium businesses don't rely on hustle. We know that hustle is such a buzzword from 2019. They rely on structure, they rely on trust, and they rely on leadership. If I could leave you one thing today with this episode, it's this. You have it in you to serve a luxury or a premium clientele. Luxury is not louder, it's calmer. It's quieter, and it is more confident. If your business feels hard, chaotic, or maybe even just a little bit exhausting, it's not because you're not talented. It's not because you don't know how to design. It's because your process isn't supporting the level of client that you want to serve yet. Your mindset hasn't quite reached that pinnacle moment where you've realized, oh, this is what they need, and I can solve that. If there's anything I learned from Stephen, it's that you build a relationship with a client, and that client will be with you forever. And forever. Even when you're semi-retired and your health is failing you, they will still call you to help them with their summer home. That is loyalty and that is trust. And that can be built from a client-designer relationship, and you don't have to be best friends with that client. So I really want to encourage you today to think about, what could you do? What is one small thing that you could do to level up your design service? Is it hiring a team member part-time? Is it taking it that extra mile to gift your client something? Is it really getting to know that client so when it's their daughter's birthday, you know what she's into? Is it figuring out, what is that process that I need that will help me run smoothly behind the scenes so that we can serve our clients really well? Whatever it is for you, I really think it's possible. You just need to try. It's one step forward, one step at a time. You can serve a luxury clientele. You too can build a $12 million home. It's not any different than building a $500,000 home. There's just a little bit more money behind it and possibly a bit more stress, but you can handle it. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I would love to hear from you. If there's anything specific that you'd love to know from my time working for Stephen on the types of jobs that we did, I've got lots of great photos and stories that I can share more of in the coming months. But please, I'm open. Please send me your questions. I, of course, will not ever divulge the names of any clients or addresses that we worked on. But if you have any questions or you want any tips, I'm here. I'm all your ears. Okay, that's it. And with that, thank you, Stephen. I'll see you guys soon.